Alright, we'll show you the progress on the old bar rake. So when they did this in the factory, they must have some kind of cute little jig that holds that spring. So you can put the keyway in. You can't get your key in. It's a half moon key. You cannot get it in that shaft because it's got to go through the gear. And so you got to play this game where you got the bearing pulled out of that end. And one guy tries to hold the shaft in the right place, and the other guy tries to line up the slot and the key and hold this spring out for the disengage. This gearbox, here's the deal. It turns slowly. I've got to make I don't know how many acres it is. It doesn't run that many hours a year. We pumped the thing full of grease. We looked at and thought about and monkeyed around. We are not going to try to put this disconnect fork back in here. 10 years I have been pulling that shaft off. I will continue to do that. There's just too many things that are bunged up in there. We did some fine machining on the key slot at a couple other places where we had burrs with little filing, little flapper wheel on a grinder to clean up the shaft. That brass bushing in that end is not so good. I don't think it gets a lot of grease up there when it's running in grease. I don't know how it gets much oil up there when it's running in oil, but there's no way to put this back to oil condition this box is in. So we are going to, I don't know, I might try to thread there's the old frost plug that came out of it. I might try to stick a grease fitting on there so I can give it a couple pumps. Zoo. And this, I'm going to put if I run a 3/8 pipe tap in that, I can put a 3/8 to quarter bushing in there, and put a grease fitting there. That'll take care of water getting in that. Give her a couple of pumps of grease whenever you're going to take the rake out to keep something in the box. We're going to lose like we did out the end. So our next thing here, I was suspicious of what caused that bolt internally to break. I mean, there's all kinds of badness in there. This rake sat somewhere. There's old pitting on the gears, pitting on the shaft. When I bought this thing in 2012 from some guy over by Nashwauk, I think he had used it, had some problems, made it runnable to sell it. So he put this tube on here. This was broke, I don't know. It's thin wall. See the bulge? So last year, a couple of times before this shaft started flopping around out of the gearbox, I had to stop a couple times. That jammed itself. It's never come all the way over, but it's jammed itself. So I don't have, an actual nice size PTO shaft that would fit that. I think the one on a potato digger would work, but I'm not going to wreck that. So what I do have, because the guy goes to auctions, is a piece of heavy wall tubing, the same size. This is all wallowed out. It used to fit better than that. The heavy wall is not going to bend out like that. This has been this way since 2012. I have never touched it. So if it's worked that long on this piece of thin wall, I'm going to put a piece of heavy wall. Now, a guy needs a metal cutting chop saw, so he's going to go get one. Me and Cody voted on this. It's a good idea. So then we can cut that end off nice and square, and I can cut my... Of course, the piece of heavy wall I got's 20 feet long. But it is what it is. That's why you go to auctions. All that steel I got at that auction, I paid $100 for it, and it's worth 20 times that, if not more, right now. So, that's what we're gonna do. Bring it back and maybe show you some of the whatever. Should be able to get that on there straight enough. I mean, there's still gonna be some give in everything, and it'll work. And make it for this way, I can keep accumulating my V-rake fund. We'll make this usable, so we got a bar rake for the places we want one, and maybe by next year we can buy a V. If the V-rake fund is gets there. All right, like I promised you, we got cutoff saw from Hobo Freight. It's done a fine job its first 2 cuts, and we put the heavy wall tube for the drive shaft. There's the difference. I got so much grease on my phone screen. I hope it looks better on your end. So there's that. I cooled it off, but the pipe is still a little warmer than you want to touch with your bare hands, so we're letting her cool out here. I got a half a dozen teeth to change on here. That some of them old case teeth that I've lost completely. There's a single like here. So I'll get to that. Probably a couple on here that can be straightened out. But it is what it is. So, oh, I forgot to get a frost plug for this, but we'll have to get a frost plug for that. So I pumped about 1/3 of a tube of grease under that bearing, or shoved it into the bearing, I should say, and put some on the gear. It runs nice and quiet. And then I always said, disconnect, it just is what it is. I'm going to have to keep doing what we've been doing for 10 years, taking it off the axle. That's just the way it is. So, as you can see here, that hole was just a little bit bigger than it should have been for a 3/8 pipe tap, but not too much bigger. It cut reasonably good threads. Ran a 3/8 by 1/4 reducer in there, and screwed a 1/4 inch grease zerk into it. So, as you can kind of see, it'll fall right on a gear. So we'll give her a few squirts. We're greasing the other stuff. You run some in there, and just have a total grease buildup. I imagine that bearing's going to start losing some at some point around the outside, but so be it. It is what it is. It's not going to come pouring out of there. We'll just keep greasing. All right, I don't know what you guys are going to be able to see here, but I'm going to explain the situation. There's, well, I should have showed you this before I ran a grinder on it. Things are rounded. Rounded is bad. So we're going to take up some of the slop in our heavy wall tube. I'm going to run some beads down the corners. I got enough slop in there. I'll run some bead and just sand them flat. It is what it is. We'll put some 70-18 on there. That'll probably keep that from jamming, because it could potentially still jam in a heavy wall tube. I just think it'll be a while, but we'll put some farmer machining on there. All right, we're really getting there now. We just welded her up. I went and tried it out, and I went up each side, so eight runs up. I went on each face, like up. And then when I flipped it, I went up that way, chipped it off, and went up there. Went and tried it in a dry tube that ain't stuffed full of grease like this one, and it still slides in. Even before I ran a sanding wheel on it. No, it's nowhere near a perfect square shaft, not at all, but it took the slop out of it. So, for what this rake rakes in a year, it's in better shape than it was last year. We'll see if it stays together. Alright, I gotta put this back together, and I guess I go putz with teeth. Cody's got the dump truck running, sort of. He's trying to rebuild a carburetor without gaskets. He had to build he's been building a few gaskets. Okay, we got mostly teeth, mostly fixed, mostly. Alright, we got the rake jack on my sunglasses in my pocket, poking me. See if this 50 will go. It's about lunchtime. I could get some lunch. So we're assembled, and I got it kind of down by raking height. We'll drive it over there. Make sure this works. Put it in raking gear right off the bat, eh? And let's see if this 50 starts up easy. Sure, that's good. It's a 50 for crying out loud. It is a little slow on one cylinder. There we go. Raking. Well, it's got a few ticks and rattles, but there we go. Put her on the dirt. Alright, I'm gonna back this in, take this off. Gonna probably cultivate the potatoes, and they're sprouted and growing, but I want to bank a little more dirt in there, so before I swing this drawbar back to actual hay raking down the center, we'll call it good.